Ingrassia is scheduled to face the Homeland Security Committee later this week. But we just heard again today from some Republicans in the Senate who literally laughed at the idea that there should be a hearing for him. What are you hearing?
Yeah, Chris, things are not looking good right now for Paul Ingrassia's nomination to lead the Office of Special Counsel. As you mentioned, political reporting on those text messages yesterday, and they are reverberating here up on Capitol Hill. He's supposed to sit for his confirmation hearing on Thursday before the Senate Homeland Security Committee, but there are some real questions of whether we'll even get to that point. Case in point for that, I spoke to one Senate Republican who sits on that committee earlier today, Senator Rick Scott of Florida. He told me he will not be voting for Ingrassia's nomination. And our colleague up here on Capitol Hill spoke to John Thune, who laughed off the idea that Ingrassia would show up for his confirmation hearing on Thursday, saying it's probably not the best decision. Take a listen.
Do you think Paul Ingrassia is unfit to be office of
I'm not voting for him.
You won't vote for him?
No.
Can you sort of talk through your decision on that?
Look at his. Look at some of the things he's said in the past, and I'm not voting for it. He's had unbelievable anti-Semitic statements, and it's not somebody I'll support.
Are you encouraging your colleagues to also not support him?
They can make their own decisions.
Do you think he shouldn't even show up for his hearing on Thursday?
That's a decision he gets to make.
Would it be a mistake for Paul Ingrassia to show up to his hearing?
Now, Chris, Rick Scott may just be one Republican on that panel, but it's significant because if all Democrats vote against Ingrassia's nomination, which we expect to happen, Rick Scott voting with those Democrats in opposition could be enough to tank this effort. So again, his confirmation hearing still scheduled for Thursday. Ingrassia himself telling MSNBC yesterday, quote, "I am holding firm," and he said he has not asked for his nomination to be pulled. But this is certainly something that we will be keeping an eye on as this opposition among Republicans to the nomination starts to percolate.
Well, I think, Ashley, in my memory, this would arguably the highest profile failure, if you want to call it that, of a nominee since, Matt Gaetz. But what do you think the chances are that Trump listens to Thune and others and decides the choice of Ingrassia is more trouble than it's worth?
Well, Matt Gaetz is the absolute perfect analogy. And even there, in the Wayback Machine, I don't believe you had so many Republicans sort of publicly saying, no way. That message was communicated to Trump with Matt Gaetz privately, but you didn't have, say, as Michael just outlined so well, a Republican member of the panel saying that he would not vote for him, the Republican leader in the Senate saying that he shouldn't bother showing up for his hearing. So you are getting here what we rarely see, which is real-time public pushback from Republicans against their own president over one of his choices. And that is a way in which it is different, and the White House might potentially respond differently. This is a president and team who don't like to lose, as they view it, scalps to the media. But in many ways, it's his own party this time saying this is not a good pick. Yeah, the media is just reporting what happened and what is seen. But David, what do we know about Trump's relationship with Ingrassia that, first of all, would inform why he was picked and why so far he's been standing by him?
Well, look, Trump likes to stand by his picks just because he doesn't like to appear to be bullied or influenced by negative media reports. And as we've seen with members of his cabinet who get into hot water, or nominees that get into hot water, how do they usually save their nominations? How do they usually sort of get back into Trump's good graces? By fighting with us, right? And by refusing to apologize or refusing to concede that they did anything wrong. Not quite sure why the president would stick by Ingrassia, other than his habit of not wanting to back down. It's something we may learn. It's something he may just decide not to do. But when you've lost Senator Rick Scott, who has a close and very good relationship with President Trump, and with Susie Wiles, the White House chief of staff, I think that tells you where this thing is going. It's so rare that we see the advise part of advice and consent when it comes to the president's nominees in this second term.
Ashley, help us understand the stakes here. What exactly, if by some what seems to be at this point miracle, he would get confirmed, what he would do there? What would his job be?
So his job is, in a way, it's an oversight job. It's handling whistleblower complaints and ethical concerns, and in some ways, policing the behavior of the White House. This is an office that, in the first term, I believe, was the one who would decree if there had been a Hatch Act violation. But I do just want to go back to this period where, if he goes forward with that hearing, there's also something at stake in that hearing for Republicans, whether or not he gets through, because every allegation that has been unearthed, from the allegation of sexual harassment in the workplace to the Nazi text chains to, frankly, a number of things that he said publicly on his podcast, on his Substack. These are all things that, by and large, Republicans and the Trump White House do not want to be associated with their brand. So there are stakes, of course, if he gets through, but there's also stakes just in continuing this process in a way that does not benefit the Republican Party.
If you want to call it that, David, this is the second text scandal to hit Republicans in as many weeks. Last week, a Politico report exposed racist text messages in a group chat used by prominent young Republicans. Is there something bigger going on here? Is the Republican Party kind of, to pick up on what Ashley just said, needing to worry about this being seen in a larger light?
Well, I'm sure the timing doesn't help, and these things often happen in threes, so who knows what's next. But, I think sometimes there's just a moment of normalcy, and we don't know what to do with it. Right. In years past, for decades, in fact, anybody with Paul Ingrassia's history just wouldn't have been nominated. They would have done the vetting, and they would have said, yeah, you might be a nice guy now, but we're never going to get through confirmation. And we don't even want to try and get through confirmation because it suggests that none of this matters to us. What's been very interesting about Ingrassia is we haven't seen the usual defense, for instance, that we saw with that group chat from high-ranking Republicans and conservative influencers, including Vice President Vance. Right? Nobody is screaming about let's not do any pearl clutching on Ingrassia. I mean, there's been in a sense radio silence. And I think part of that is that Republicans in the Senate didn't spend a lot of time mulling this over. They were very quick to say that he was not going to have their support. And again, it's one thing for some of the usual suspects to oppose a Trump pick, or even for a Majority Leader Thune to suggest somebody's in trouble. When Rick Scott is this unequivocal and quick in his opposition, and there have been some others, then it's just a no-go zone for Ingrassia.
David Drucker, Ashley Parker, Michael Schnell, thank you all.
The revenge president. Donald Trump's second run in the White House isn't about policy anymore. It's about payback. Every decision feels personal. The tariffs on India aren't really about oil. They're about dominance. The insults towards Colombia's president aren't about drugs. They're about humiliation. The threat to send troops into U.S. cities isn't a show of control. It's the performance of a man trying to prove he still owns fear. Trump has turned the presidency into a revenge tour, settling old scores with the world and using government like a weapon of emotion. When Trump feels cornered, he doesn't negotiate, he strikes. His politics have always run on the fuel of resentment towards critics, toward institutions, toward anyone who ever made him look weak. That's why this phase of his rule feels darker. It's powered not by ambition, but by grievance. He sees betrayal everywhere, from allies who didn't clap loud enough to judges who ruled against him. Each new target gives him a headline, and each act of retribution gives his followers the satisfaction of seeing someone punished. For them, it's justice. For him, it's survival. This week's moves fit that pattern perfectly. India gets slammed with tariffs because it didn't obey. Colombia gets insulted because it dared to answer back. The U.S. cities are threatened because some governors refused to bow. What ties them all together is not ideology, but impulse. The reflex of a man who believes politics is just another season of revenge TV. The danger is that revenge always demands escalation. Once you start punishing enemies, you have to keep finding new ones. Trump's circle grows smaller, his tone harsher, his vision narrower. Even allies begin to hesitate, unsure when the loyalty test will come for them. That's how isolation begins, not with diplomacy failing, but with trust evaporating. Trump once promised to drain the swamp. Instead, he drowned the country in his grudges. Every tweet, every threat, every tariff is just another echo of the same message. You hurt me, now I'll hurt you. That's not policy, that's pathology. And the longer it continues, the more America looks like a man chasing ghosts of the past instead of building a future.